Ah, fuck. Ah, fuck. Ah, fuck. Alright, so these small blocks don't actually have any oil passages. I still plugged the coolant holes up because you don't want grit getting into the water pump and chewing up the impeller. Then obviously log off the cylinder. Be careful if you're doing this. Be careful with these smaller holes. You'll end up pushing whatever you plug in there. You'll end up pushing it down into the coolant passage, and you'll lose it. You'll have a hell of a time getting it up. There was I lost an earplug doing that one time, and had to like pressurize the system and try and pop it out, add water and blow it out so I could get it with a pick and just pull it out. It was a big pain in the ass. So yeah, be careful if you're gonna plug hole, which you should. You want to try and keep as much out as you can. So ideally, I'd use a roll-lock buffering disc here. Just slap it on a drill and it makes it real easy. And they got different grits based on the color. I got a gasket scraper and a razor, which works just fine. Wipe it off with brake clean when you're done. Real good. I didn't go and make sure everything was level. Some guys go and kind of sand off the deck and everything. I'm not doing that. It's not a special truck. But while you're here, go ahead and tap the bolt holes for the heads. And then last thing, just coat the cylinder bores with some oil so you don't got a dry startup. There's the other side. There's no way this head gasket's sealing. Also, talking about cleaning, main spots you want to focus on is around the rings here, these compression rings and the coolant passages. You know, rust like that, that's a bolt hole. So as long as you knock it down, you know, this on the outside right here, it's not as important. I like to blow out the passages that still have coolant in them. Just give them a little bit, like right down there, because you want this, when you lay the head gasket in, you want it to be completely dry. And if it's got coolant in it, then shit ain't gonna be dry. Coolant gone. I think usually the rule is like part number facing up towards the heads. So at least in this case, mine is, you got the flat spots facing up, and then I like to put a little bit of oil in the bores, that way it's not a dry startup. Alright, well, this is gonna be fun to get in there. In my case, these are not TTY bolts. They're not torque to yield, so you can reuse them. So that's what I'm gonna do. The book tells you to put them back in the same spot they went in. So I'm also gonna do that. Almost forgot, on those bolts down there that are touching a coolant passage, you're gonna wanna put some kind of form of gasket sealer on it, like Permatex #2 or something like that. And then on these blind holes up here, just coat the threads in oil. You want some kind of sealant on this to seal off the bolt hole keep coolant from leaking out. Normally with these, I like to, once I get the head positioned, I like to put one bolt in, and then you can kind of wiggle the head around just to get it to seat on the dowels, and then you can put the rest of the bolts in. There's a torque sequence for what I'm working on, and it's 3 steps for the 88 to 95. It's 45. Get them snug, and then do that sequence down to 45 foot-pounds, and do it again for 65. So all right, both heads are in and torqued. You know, I probably should have cleaned the China walls off before I put the heads on, but be okay. Put that bracket on the back. While I'm thinking about it, make sure you get this ground strap back on, and I've already cleaned it off. Yeah, make sure you get this. It goes, there's a bolt back here, kind of on the bottom. It goes back there. Definitely put that in, make sure it's cleaned off. Otherwise you'll have a nightmare of a time when it don't start. Stud that goes on the front of the head. This will probably make it because the box is bad. For this compressor bolt, I actually had to lift up on the compressor while it was still bolted in and get that bolt to line up. It is very hard to get it to line up with the head. And then get your AC pulley on. There's the sound of the fuel pump on the burb going out. So when you're putting these on, back, middle, front, when I pulled them off, there actually wasn't any gaskets on them, but it's a cheap insurance. The manifolds are getting pitted, so I'm gonna throw them on. Usually what you do is you put the bolts in, and then you just drop this over the bolts. And when you're putting these in, make sure you put this spacer on it. They need the fat washer. Otherwise, when you're torquing them down, they only go to, the center is 26 and the outers are 20 foot-pounds, but you can bottom out the bolt head and crack the manifold or snap the bolt off. So make sure they've got these washers. All right, I got them all torqued down. I usually like to, when I'm putting the manifold on, you don't want to just tighten one bolt all the way down, or you'll probably crack something or snap it. You want to kind of go back and forth as you're tightening them down, just do little by little, because I thought I was going to have to use a manifold spreader. That's how tight this was to get back on. I didn't take it apart hot or nothing. But those bolts felt pretty tight sometimes. So there's the bracket back in the back for the clips that hold the spark plugs on, and it's those 3 bolts up there. They're going to be a pain in the ass to get on. And then I'm going to clean up the lifter valley and throw these push rods in. These are the push rods. These are the old push rods right here. Brother, like, they look like there's straight mud on them. Dude before me clearly did not prioritize oil changes. Check out the, buddy was not interested in oil changes. Then everyone's gonna say, oh, these push rods don't match up with the lifters. Yeah, you're right, they don't. The rest of the engine ain't totally perfect either, so I don't care. And throw on the intake, which actually came from the engine I'm building for that. So did these, and so did the heads. So I'm just bringing everything over there. Get ready to put the intake on. I want to get this power steering pump bracket in and that bolt. So I got this bolt, which I'm like 90% sure the brackets, one of these braces goes here. It kind of runs from like the top of the tensioner pulley, and it goes down through here. It's like routed really weird. And then there's one that goes on here. There's a nut that goes on there. So that obviously ain't lined up. I don't know how hard it's gonna be to... Okay. Wow, I went too far. I have no idea what this goes to. A little 10 mil. But yeah, that bowl goes in there. And then... Okay, so I did this last night, and I got no idea where these go. So we got a bolt and a nut. So I'm guessing this is the one that comes up through here. I ain't gonna do it yet, obviously. It goes up through here, and it mounts in there somewhere. I could probably thread it in now if I wanted to. Yeah, so that screws in, and this mounts right there. Cool, cool. One last thing before I put the intake back on. I want to say this oil pressure sensor is where all the oil's been leaking from. You can watch it where it's running. It goes down the back of the bell housing. You can see all the oil back there. And I want to say this looks like oil. So I don't know if I bumped it. I mean, it looks. I thought I might have bent something the last time I put the intake on. It looks okay from here, but I have the old one. I was gonna use it, but I got the one from the step side engine. So I'm gonna spin this one out and just replace it. See if we can't get it to stop leaking. Yeah, it was probably leaking from the sensor itself. This is, what is this, the sending unit? I want to say that's the sending unit. Oh, wait a minute. Okay, so there should be 3 prongs, right? Just 2, huh? There's just 2 prongs. This one's got 3. Interesting. Really? That's just a 2-pronger, huh? Clean it off with the wire wheel. Wrap it up with some Teflon. There is a chance that the Teflon could break off. A piece could break off. You gonna focus or not? What are we doing here, man? That piece could break off and end up in the engine. Or it could be fine. Also, when you want to wrap Teflon, you want to wrap it with the threads. Okay, stop zooming in. So that whenever you break it off, the piece is facing away from the thread. So that when you wrap it, you're not peeling the Teflon off with it. See? It's a 1 1/16, by the way. Last thing I'm gonna do before the intake goes back in. Actually, I still gotta clean this off. So before I clean this off, put this EGR valve back on it. So this is the block off plate that came off the original one for this. But after I snapped the heater hose fitting off in the original intake that went in that one, I swapped this intake over from the engine I'm building for the step side because I don't need it. And then I got a fitting. Look, watch the last video. So I'm actually gonna put the EGR back on. So for whatever reason, dude put a block off plate on it. So I'm putting that back on. All right, it's ready for RTV. We ain't gonna need that. I'm using Permatex Ultra Gray. I use it for a bunch of stuff, including this. Put it on those china walls there. I can zoom in with this. Look at that. And then also I like to go up, kind of right there, kind of go up the head a little bit until you get to that bolt hole. And then I'm also gonna put it around here, around these water jackets, because those kind of leak too. Not too much. You can just kind of rub it around with your finger. Let me do it here. Something like that's fine. And then go on the back side. Just kind of put it around Put it around there too, because that'll work. That'll help keep it stuck to the cylinder head. Because when you get new gaskets, new intake gaskets, most of them come with the pins, the little dowels, and you can kind of put them in the four corners once you have your gasket down, and it'll hold it in, and you can just kind of slap the intake on top of it, and it kind of guides it. I have them in there for the gaskets that I'm using for my other truck, but because of it's not just a direct drop down, you got to I'm gonna have to lay it on top of that sensor and then kind of tip it down so it gets past all this the brackets, the braces for the AC, and then tip it back. Alright, that went a lot easier than last time. It helps to do a couple dry runs, just kind of put it on, see how it's going to go, and then take it off. You kind of got to plan it out. I'll get in the back. Yep. So, this bracket goes all the way in the back, the last hole. I can't do it with one hand right now. And then this one goes front right, these two in the front. With this RTV, it sets up in like a half hour. So get everything kind of snug, and then wait a half hour to an hour, and then torque it down. If you do got issues with the gasket not lining up, you know, it might have slipped a little bit, you can shine a light in there like I did with these first two, and you can shine a light in there and pick up, you know, run a couple bolts through it, pick up the intake a little bit. You can get in there with a screwdriver or a pick and just kind of move the gasket around and get them holes lined up. Alright, there's the torque sequence for what I got. 88, 350. Basically, do the front four, do the back four, and then do the front four. In the meantime, while I was waiting for the RTV to dry a little bit, I put the tensioner bolt back on, put the bracket, the braces back on there, and took the fan and the water pump pulley off so I can get to this bolt, because in the last video you saw that these are both the ones that hold, the bolts that hold this lower fan shroud on are rusted on. And I feel like taking them off, so I just took this off. Something that I forgot is I got the throttle body on. I'm working on the linkage here. Two of these bolts I completely forgot. The two bigger ones, there's one right there, then there's one all the way down there, right there. They actually go on those last. Anyway, they're gonna go on these last two intake bolts on the right, on the driver's side. And then that little one right there is a 13 mil. So I'm gonna have to take those back off. I always forget that. I've done that like 3 times. I get the intake on, and then I forget this linkage has got to go on. All right, linkage is tight. The rotor is in. Tightening that. You don't need the tool. Get yourself a 9/16 crow's foot. Tighten it up. All these sensors are gonna go in, bolt right in there. Apparently I broke this one goes to the air injection over here, and then this one, where does this one go to? Oh no, this one goes to the air injection over here, and this one goes to, I believe, the MAF, which is right here. So that kind of sucks. Goes back there. And then throttle position sensor. Just plug everything in. Get that heater hose back on. That is going to be right here. I don't know what it's stuck on. Alright, so to find top dead center, the way I do it, get the distributor on and do valve lash right, is I've tightened the intake down a little bit. Okay, so it's snug. Usually I just want it to, so the push rod's barely spinning. It needs to go down a little more. You want to wait for this intake valve to open and then close while you're spinning the crank pulley or whatever. And then it's going to open and it's going to close. and then you're gonna want to find, and then you can feel the compression. I have the #1 spark plug out, so you can feel the compression as it comes out. Put your finger over it, and you can feel the compression come out. And once you do that, all you're gonna do is just line up that timing mark right there, which I'm painting. Can I zoom in? Woo! I can zoom in. Keep spinning the balancer or the pulley until that mark on the harmonic balancer lines up with top dead center right there. You want this to be facing the #1 cylinder. If it was the old HEI, if it was an older HEI distributor, you want the vacuum advance to be facing #6 over here, but there isn't any. So you want the contact pointed at #1, and it's going to drop in. And then you can use. I've already done all this because I can't. Oh, that's where this was. Bruh. So this is part of the vacuum hose that I broke. Hey, what's y'all's favorite NASCAR driver? You see in there? Look at all them watching. I'm out here slaving away on this shit. K1500, Larson just crashed and Elliot's in the garage. I have no idea when you're going to see this video. Leave this breather hose. I believe it's called a breather hose. It goes to it's the vacuum hose for the booster. Make sure your linkage is, your throttle linkage is working good. Distributor's hooked up and bolted. Be careful when you're bolting down those hold down screws for the cap. The ears kind of have a tendency to break. So I had everything together, right? I went to start it and turned over but did not start.